For the first time, radar images recorded inside a Navy ship.
For the first time ever, we've got radar images from inside a Navy ship. The Navy has always been at the cutting edge of exploring the unknown, whether it's diving deep into the ocean or soaring high in the sky. Along the way, they've come across some seriously creepy and weird stuff. Think about all those mysterious UFO sightings up near the Arctic, strange underwater objects that seem to break the laws of physics, and those bizarre swarms of drones buzzing around off the California coast. The stories range from solid eyewitness accounts to declassified documents and some really intriguing photos. So come join us as we dive into some of the Navy's most chilling and mysterious encounters. Hey there! Let's talk about Dr. Gary P. Nolan. He's a well-respected professor at Stanford, known for his work in cancer research. But lately, he's been making waves for diving into a totally different topic: UFOs and the possibility of extraterrestrial life. It all started when someone asked him to take a look at some materials that were supposedly linked to UFO sightings. With his scientific background, he added a lot of credibility to this pretty wild subject. Dr. Nolan believes that there's non-human intelligence hanging out on Earth, and he backs this up with some intriguing evidence like strange materials and documented experiences. He thinks these phenomena are too important to just brush off and really deserve some serious scientific investigation. He's even talked about the cool technologies that might be connected to these sightings, suggesting they could teach us a thing or two about new ways to travel and materials we could use. What makes his claims stand out is his solid reputation in the science world and his careful way of looking at the evidence. Unlike a lot of UFO fans, Dr. Nolan is all about rigorous scientific examination and being transparent with the findings. It's a fascinating shift from his usual research, and many people are paying attention. Back in July 2019, a bunch of U.S. Navy destroyers like the USS Omaha had some wild encounters with unidentified aerial phenomena off the coast of California. They caught some crazy stuff on infrared cameras and in their logs, showing swarms of mysterious drones or UAPs buzzing around the ships for a long time, doing things that regular drones just can't do. The USS Omaha teamed up with the USS Paul Hamilton, USS Kidd, and USS Russell, and they all reported seeing these things over several nights. One time, 3 UAPs showed up near the USS Paul Hamilton right after it switched off its Automatic Identification System, AIS, which made it seem like they were reacting to what the ship was doing. These objects looked like tiny dots in the infrared images and moved super fast and agile, hovering at different heights and often getting really close to the ships. The encounters went on for hours each night, with the UAPs pulling off maneuvers that seemed way beyond what any drone can do. Even though they tried using counter-drone measures and looked into it thoroughly, the Navy couldn't figure out where these UAPs were coming from or who was behind them. The release of some old UFO photos from 1971, supposedly snapped by the USS Trepang SSN 674 submarine, has really stirred up a lot of chatter among UFO enthusiasts. These cool images show some unidentified objects hovering over the water between Iceland and Norway, and they've led to 2 main theories. On one hand, some UFO hunters think these photos might be proof of secret U.S. aviation tests. They believe the strange objects could be classified experimental planes that were tested in out-of-the-way places to keep them under wraps. The labels on some of the images, like official photograph and unauthorized disclosure subject, kind of back up the idea that there's some hush-hush military stuff going on. On the flip side, there are those who think these photos show alien spaceships. They point to the weird shapes and movements of the objects and suggest they could be extraterrestrial visitors checking out spots for things like oil drilling. There's even a sequence of photos that shows one object appearing to crash into the sea, possibly with signs of artillery fire nearby, which really cranks up the speculation about a wild encounter between U.S. forces and an alien craft. This whole debate highlights the big divide in the UFO community, where people can interpret the same evidence in totally different ways. Admiral Tim Gadet's take on UFOs. Admiral Tim Gadet, a former Rear Admiral in the U.S. Navy, has been making some pretty interesting comments backing up UFO whistleblowers, especially David Grush. Grush has claimed that the government is secretly trying to recover alien life and technology. With Gadet's extensive Navy experience and high-ranking gigs in the Department of Commerce, including acting administrator of NOAA, he definitely brings a lot of credibility to the table. In his interviews, Gadet has stressed how important it is to acknowledge and share what we know about interactions with non-human intelligence. He believes that being open about this stuff could really help the public understand these phenomena better. Gadet pointed out that there's a lot of interest and research happening in the military to figure out and possibly use the advanced technology seen in UFO sightings. He thinks that if we could really grasp and utilize this technology, it could give us a major edge in military conflicts, which is why there's been so much secrecy around it. Gadet's remarks have really stirred up the ongoing conversation about whether extraterrestrial life exists and what the government knows about it. His support for whistleblowers like Grush, along with his impressive background, has reignited interest and scrutiny in the UFO community and beyond. By pushing for more transparency, Gadet is trying to change the conversation and encourage a more open and informed chat about these mysterious encounters. Alex Misa, a researcher, got really curious about some UFO photos from 1971 that were supposedly taken by the USS Kidd submarine in the Arctic. These photos popped up in a French magazine back in 2015 and showed all sorts of unidentified objects near the Arctic Circle. Misa thought these images could be pretty significant, so he jumped into figuring out where they came from and if they were legit. What really caught his attention was the credibility of the person who first shared the photos with him. The pictures seemed to show a cigar-shaped object hovering over the water, going through some kind of explosion, and then crashing into the ocean. These dramatic shots sparked a lot of excitement and debate among UFO enthusiasts. While digging into the photos, Misa noticed some interesting details, like markings that said, "official photograph" and "not to be released," which hinted at some secrecy and importance. He tried to track down people linked to the photos, like Officer John Clicker and Admiral Dean Reynolds Sackett, but came up empty, which just added to the mystery. Misa has played a big role in getting these images noticed, stirring up conversations about what they might mean. Some folks think the objects could be advanced aircraft tests, while others are convinced they might be alien spaceships. The USS Kidd encounter has got people buzzing thanks to some UFO photos from back in 1971. These pics, which were supposedly taken during a military mission somewhere between Iceland and Norway, show all sorts of unidentified flying objects hanging out near the Arctic Circle. They didn't come to light until 2015 when a French magazine published them, and since then, they've really captured everyone's imagination. The images taken by the USS Kidd submarine feature everything from cigar-shaped crafts to flying discs. Some of these objects look like they're just hovering over the water, while others seem to be zooming through the air. There's even a series of shots that hints at one of the objects possibly blowing up or crashing into the ocean, with smoke and splashes all around. People like Alex Misa are diving deep into these photos, trying to figure out if they're the real deal and what they might mean. The pictures have some interesting markings too, like "official photograph" and warnings not to release them, which adds a whole new layer of mystery and suggests someone in charge might know more than they're letting on. The whole USS Kidd encounter has become a hot topic for UFO fans, with all sorts of theories floating around, from secret military tests to the possibility of aliens dropping by. But since there's no solid proof or confirmation from the military, the whole thing remains pretty mysterious, leaving everyone wondering what really went down in those Arctic waters all those years ago. The notes and descriptions that come with the supposed USS Kidd Arctic UFO photos from 1971 really add a cool layer of mystery to the whole story. These notes, as we've heard, have labels like "official photograph" and warnings about not sharing them, which hints at some serious official secrecy around these images. One of the most interesting things about these notes is how they try to categorize and control who gets to see the info in the photos. Phrases like "not to be released" suggest there's a deliberate effort to keep details under wraps about what's shown in the pictures. This secrecy has sparked a lot of chatter among UFO fans about what these objects really are. Are they advanced military planes being tested, or could they be alien spacecraft? Plus, the photo descriptions mention specific things, like the shape of the object, cigar-shaped, disc-shaped, and how it interacts with its surroundings, hovering over water, maybe crashing or exploding. While these details are super intriguing, there's no official backup or context from military sources, which leaves plenty of room for debate in the UFO research community. The annotations and descriptions are crucial pieces of evidence for folks looking into the USS Kidd encounter, giving some exciting clues but also raising questions about whether they're legit and what they could really mean. There are all sorts of theories and ideas floating around about the UFOs seen in the USS Kidd photos and similar sightings. One popular thought is that these unidentified flying objects might just be some super advanced military aircraft being tested in secret. People who believe this say that the cigar-shaped and disc-shaped objects in the photos look a lot like designs from classified aviation projects, which makes them think these sightings are actually from Earth. On the flip side, there's another interesting theory that suggests these UFOs could actually be alien spaceships visiting us. Supporters of this idea point to the weird shapes and movements of the objects, plus the fact that they don't have any recognizable markings or propulsion systems that we know of. They often reference past UFO sightings and the idea that there could be extraterrestrial civilizations checking us out. Then there are those who think these UFOs might not be from either Earth or outer space, but could be something even stranger, like interdimensional travelers or time machines. These theories often pull from scientific ideas about parallel universes and advanced physics concepts. All in all, the wide variety of theories and speculations shows just how mysterious and intriguing UFOs are. Without solid proof or official recognition, the debates keep going strong among researchers, enthusiasts, and skeptics, each one sharing their take on what these puzzling sightings could really be. Nigel Watson's take on UFOs. Nigel Watson is a well-known UFO researcher who has some pretty interesting thoughts on the UFO sightings we've seen, especially those photos from the USS Kidd. He mixes a skeptical look with an open-minded attitude when digging into these sightings. Watson finds the photos fascinating, pointing out the different shapes and the dramatic moments they capture. He stresses the importance of really looking closely at these images, considering things like whether they're real, the context behind them, and the chance that they could be misinterpreted or even faked. Now let's talk about whistleblowers. Admiral Tim Gadet, a former Rear Admiral in the U.S. Navy, has been vocal in supporting UFO whistleblowers, especially David Grush. Grush has claimed that the government is secretly working on recovering alien life and technology. With Gadet's extensive Navy background and high-ranking positions in the Department of Commerce, including acting administrator of NOAA, his credibility really adds weight to these claims. In interviews, Gadet has highlighted how important it is to recognize and talk about our interactions with non-human intelligence. He believes that being open about this stuff can help the public better understand these phenomena. Gadet pointed out that there's a lot of interest and research happening in the military to figure out and possibly use the advanced tech seen in these UFO encounters. He thinks that if we could fully grasp and utilize this technology, it could give us a major edge in military situations, which is why there's been so much secrecy around it. His comments have stirred up the ongoing debate about whether extraterrestrial life exists and what the government knows about it. By backing whistleblowers like Grush and drawing from his own experiences, Gadet has sparked fresh interest and discussion in the UFO community and beyond. He's pushing for more transparency, hoping to shift the conversation towards a more open and informed discussion about these unexplained encounters. Researcher Alex Miss got really interested in some UFO photos from 1971 that were supposedly taken by the USS Kidd submarine. These pics popped up in a French magazine back in 2015 and showed some weird objects hanging out near the Arctic Circle. Miss saw the potential in these images and jumped into figuring out where they came from and if they were legit. His curiosity was sparked by how credible the person was who first shared the photos with him. The images seemed to show a cigar-shaped object floating above the water, looking like it was blowing up and then crashing into the ocean. These dramatic shots created quite a buzz and stirred up a lot of chatter in the UFO community. While digging into the photos, Miss noticed some interesting details, like markings that said "official photograph" and "not to be released," which hinted at some secrecy and importance behind them. Even though he tried to track down people linked to the photos, like Officer John Clicker and Admiral Dean Reynolds Sackett, he couldn't find any more info, which just added to the mystery. Miss has really helped shine a light on these images, sparking conversations about what they might mean. Some folks think the objects could be advanced military tests, while others are convinced they might be alien spacecraft. The USS Kidd encounter. So there's this whole buzz around the USS Kidd encounter, which has to do with some supposed UFO photos from 1971 up in the Arctic. These pics, which were reportedly snapped during a military mission between Iceland and Norway, show all sorts of unidentified flying objects near the Arctic Circle. They popped up in a French magazine back in 2015, and ever since, people have been super interested and debating what they really mean. The photos, taken by the USS Kidd submarine, show everything from cigar-shaped crafts to disc-like objects. Some look like they're hovering over the water, while others seem to be flying around. The sequence of images kind of tells a story, hinting at an object that might have exploded or crashed into the ocean, with smoke and water splashing everywhere. Researchers and UFO fans like Alex Miss have been digging into these photos to figure out if they're the real deal and what they might imply. What's really intriguing are the markings on the images, like labels saying "official photograph" and orders not to release them. This adds a whole new layer of mystery and suggests that there might be some official recognition or secrecy at play. The USS Kidd encounter has become a hot topic for UFO enthusiasts, with theories ranging from secret military experiments to possible visits from aliens. But since there's no solid proof or backup from military sources, the whole thing remains a big question mark, keeping the speculation and investigation alive about what really went down in those Arctic waters that day. Photo annotations and descriptions. The notes and descriptions that come with the supposed USS Kidd Arctic UFO photos from 1971 really add a cool layer of mystery to the whole story. These notes reportedly have labels like "official photograph" and warnings about not sharing the info, which hints at some level of official recognition and secrecy around these images. One of the most interesting things about these annotations is how they try to categorize and control who gets to see the info in the photos. Phrases like "not to be released" suggest there's a real effort to manage how this information gets out there. This secrecy has definitely sparked a lot of speculation among UFO fans about what these objects really are. Could they be super advanced military planes being tested, or maybe even alien spacecraft? Plus, the descriptions of the photos mention specific things, like the shape of the object, cigar-shaped or disc-shaped, and how it interacts with its surroundings, like hovering over water or maybe crashing. While these details are super intriguing, they don't have any official confirmation or extra context from military sources, which leaves a lot of room for debate and interpretation among UFO researchers. Overall, these photo annotations and descriptions are key pieces of evidence for anyone looking into the USS Kidd encounter. They offer some exciting clues, but also raise questions about whether they're legit and what they really mean in the bigger picture. Theories and speculations about UFOs. There's a lot of chatter out there about what the UFOs in the USS Kidd photos really are. One popular idea is that these unidentified flying objects are actually advanced experimental aircraft that the military is testing in secret. Supporters of this theory think that the cigar-shaped and disc-shaped objects in the photos look a lot like designs from classified aviation projects, which would mean they're from Earth. On the flip side, there's a pretty interesting theory that suggests these UFOs could be extraterrestrial spaceships visiting us from another planet. People who believe in this idea point to the strange shapes and movements of the objects, plus the fact that they don't have any recognizable markings or propulsion systems that we know of. They often reference old UFO sightings and the possibility that there are aliens out there checking us out. Then there are some folks who think these UFOs could be something totally different, like interdimensional travelers or even time machines. These theories dive into some wild scientific ideas about parallel universes and advanced physics. All in all, the variety of thoughts and theories shows just how mysterious and fascinating UFOs are. Since there's no solid proof or official word on what these things are, the debate keeps going among researchers, enthusiasts, and skeptics, each with their own take on the evidence and what these strange sightings might really mean. Nigel Watson's take. So, Nigel Watson is a well-known UFO researcher who's been digging into some pretty interesting stuff about UFOs, especially the photos from the USS Kidd and other similar incidents. His style is a mix of healthy skepticism and an open mind when it comes to figuring out what these sightings might really mean. He finds the photos from the USS Kidd fascinating, pointing out the different shapes and the exciting moments captured in them. But he's all about taking a closer look at these images, thinking about things like whether they're real, the context behind them, and whether they might be misinterpreted or even faked. In his work, Nigel dives into the history of UFO sightings and the trends that pop up in reports from all over the world. He really pushes for critical thinking and a scientific approach when it comes to looking at these phenomena, warning against jumping to conclusions or getting swept up in sensational stories. On top of that, he talks about how UFO stories have left their mark on culture and how they're portrayed in the media. These sightings often spark a lot of buzz and discussions, shaping how people view science, technology, and the unknown. All in all, Nigel Watson brings a balanced vibe to the UFO scene, encouraging thorough investigation while also recognizing the ongoing intrigue and mystery that UFO sightings hold and what they might mean for our understanding of the universe. Nigel Watson dives into the history of UFO sightings and the patterns that pop up in reports from around the world. He really emphasizes the need for critical thinking and a scientific approach when looking into these strange occurrences, warning us not to jump to conclusions or get swept up in sensational stories. Plus, he takes a look at how UFOs have shaped our culture and how they're shown in the media and pop culture. These sightings definitely spark a lot of public interest and debate, affecting how we think about science, technology, and the mysteries out there. Overall, Watson brings a well-rounded view to ufology, promoting thorough investigation while also recognizing the ongoing intrigue and enigma surrounding UFO sightings and what they might mean for our understanding of the universe. Check out the 1971 Arctic UFO photos. These pics, which are said to have come from the USS Kidd submarine, have been stirring up a lot of buzz and debate in the UFO world and beyond. They first hit the scene in a French magazine called Top Secret back in 2015, and they show some pretty wild unidentified objects flying around in the Arctic skies and waters. The images feature all kinds of strange aerial crafts, from triangular shapes to cigar-like ones, just hovering over the ocean. Some folks think these could be advanced military planes being tested in secret, while others are convinced they might be alien spaceships checking out Earth's polar areas. What makes these photos even more intriguing is the time they popped up, right in the thick of the Cold War, and when tech in aerospace and military stuff was really taking off. This whole situation gets people buzzing about secret experiments or maybe even encounters with aliens. Whether these photos are genuine or not is still a hot topic among UFO enthusiasts. Skeptics point out that there's not much solid proof or reliable witness accounts, while believers are all about the striking visuals and the historical backdrop of these sightings. The 1971 Arctic UFO photos still manage to spark curiosity and are a big part of conversations about what humans are capable of, whether aliens are out there, and what these mysterious flying objects really are. Bill Smiley's take on UFO shapeshifting. Bill Smiley is a well-known UFO researcher who shares some pretty fascinating thoughts on the whole UFO scene, especially when it comes to the idea that they can shapeshift. He's been looking into sightings, including some photos from the Arctic in 1971 that were supposedly taken by the USS Kidd, and he thinks these might show UFOs changing their shapes or looks. His ideas come from a ton of reports from all over the world, where people claim to have seen objects morphing from one shape to another or changing in how they appear. This has led to a lot of speculation about advanced technologies, or maybe even aliens, which is why researchers like Smiley are digging deeper into what this all means. His comments often spark conversations in the UFO research community about what these phenomena really are. He believes it's super important to investigate these sightings thoroughly and keep an open mind, especially when they challenge what we usually think we know about aerospace tech and science. While some skeptics roll their eyes at shape-shifting UFO stories, those who believe in them argue that these sightings highlight just how mysterious and complex these aerial oddities can be. Back in 2015, a French magazine called Top Secret dropped some wild photos that claimed to show a UFO sighting from way back in March 1971 near the Arctic Circle. These pics, reportedly taken by the USS Kidd submarine, quickly caught the eye of UFO fans and curious folks everywhere. The images showed all kinds of unidentified objects, some looking triangular and others more like cigars, just hovering over the ocean. One of the coolest shots even seemed to capture an object puffing out smoke or vapor, hinting at something pretty intense happening. Now, whether these photos are the real deal has been a hot topic for debate. Some UFO buffs think they might actually be proof of alien spacecraft or some tech way beyond what we know. But there are plenty of skeptics, too, who think it could just be misinterpretations, clever hoaxes, or maybe even secret military tests. The fact that a mainstream magazine like Top Secret published these photos only added to the buzz, leading to even more discussions and investigations from researchers and the public. John Greenwald, the guy behind the Black Vault, took a deep dive into some UFO photos from 1971 that were supposedly snapped from the USS Kidd submarine. He's all about transparency and getting access to government documents, so he fired off a bunch of Freedom of Information Act (FOIA) requests to get to the bottom of things. Greenwald really went the extra mile to check the details of those photos, like making sure the USS Kidd was actually in the right spot at the right time. He even looked into crew members and old records to make sure the whole story lined up. But even with all that hard work, Greenwald couldn't definitively prove if the photos were real or not. His investigation showed just how tough it can be to confirm these kinds of historical events through official sources and pointed out the confusion that often surrounds UFO sightings and military records. Through the Black Vault, he keeps pushing for people to have access to government info and more transparency about UFO stuff. His work is a great resource for anyone interested in digging deeper into the mysteries of unidentified flying objects and how they connect with the military. David Grush's credibility. So, David Grush is this guy who's been making waves in the UFO community with his claims about the government trying to get its hands on extraterrestrial life. He calls himself a whistleblower and says that the US government is up to some secretive stuff when it comes to studying and maybe even using alien technology. Now, when it comes to his credibility, people are pretty divided. His fans love his detailed stories and the fact that he's willing to spill some pretty sensitive information, believing he has some insider knowledge about what's really going on behind closed doors. He often talks about advanced tech and interactions with non-human beings, claiming that this stuff is super important for both military and scientific progress. On the flip side, there are a lot of skeptics who don't buy into what he's saying. They point out that there's no solid evidence to back up his claims, and some think his stories sound a bit too sensational. Without hard proof or other people backing him up, they argue that we should take his statements with a grain of salt, especially given how wild and controversial UFO stories can be. In the end, David Grush's place in the UFO conversation really highlights how curious people are about the idea of aliens and what the government might be keeping secret. Check this out. There are some intriguing images floating around that supposedly show these unidentified objects just hanging out above the water, and they look like they're puffing out some smoke or exhaust. In some shots, you can even see these things diving into the ocean, causing some splashes and ripples below. This has sparked all kinds of theories about what these objects really are. Some folks think they might be super advanced military planes being tested secretly, while others are convinced they could be alien spaceships. The mystery behind these photos keeps them at the center of attention for anyone interested in UFOs and military run-ins with strange objects. Now, about the USS Kidd. When it had its run-in with some unidentified aerial objects, it went into quiet mode and pulled out some counter-drone tricks. This really shows how the Navy is taking these sightings seriously. By going quiet and cutting down on communications, the USS Kidd was trying to figure things out without being too obvious. This kind of move is pretty standard for military operations when they want to keep a low profile and avoid being detected. Plus, using counter-drone measures shows they were definitely on high alert about what was going on up there. Reports are saying that the ship has been busy trying to figure out and maybe even deal with some unidentified drones, or UAOS, hanging around. They've been using their onboard intelligence teams and teaming up with nearby boats to get more info and stay on top of things. The whole counter-drone effort shows that there's a lot of chatter in military circles about what these mysterious aerial phenomena are up to. It really highlights the Navy's focus on keeping things secure and being ready for any weird aerial activity. Now let's talk about Dr. Salvatore Cesar Pais. He's done some pretty cool stuff in advanced aerospace and propulsion tech, especially with the US Navy. His inventions, often called UFO patents, have caught a lot of eyes because they could change the game for propulsion systems. One of his standout ideas is this hybrid aerospace underwater craft, which is basically a vehicle that can fly and swim underwater by using electromagnetic fields to lighten its load. This could be a huge leap in transportation tech, allowing for crazy speeds and agility. Dr. Pais is also working on an inertial mass reduction device, which is all about changing how heavy something feels using controlled electromagnetic fields. If this tech gets off the ground, it could shake things up in aerospace, defense, and even commercial travel. While people are definitely curious and excited about these ideas, there's also a fair bit of skepticism from the scientific community because there's a big gap between the theory and actually making it work. Still, Dr. Pais' partnership with the Naval Air Warfare Center Aircraft Division shows that they're taking this seriously in both military and scientific circles. His work keeps sparking conversations about what we know and what might be possible in the future.